I was asked to speak regarding Nichum Avel because I lost a brother, and I want to share with you the different stages of grief and perhaps how to do Nichum Avel in a way that truly gives comfort rather than just going through the motions and being yotze your mitzvah, your chiyuv of dropping in, but to really give a nechama. I lost a brother. He was 2 years younger than me. His name was Rabbi Benzion Klatzko, and he was nifter in his sleep. And the first reaction, especially when there's sudden tragedy and there's no warning and there was no illness that preceded the ptira, is shock, is disbelief. That could happen even if there was a warning, even if the person was ill, till the person finally goes, it still takes us by surprise. But certainly when somebody is nifter due to a tragic accident, it's very hard to digest the reality that the person's nifter. And I remember when I heard it was on a Motzei Shabbos, I felt like the oxygen had left my lungs. I didn't know what to believe, what to think. And during that time before the Levaya, when everyone's preparing for the Levaya and Hespedim have to be written and families are coming together and they're crying together, it's a surreal time. That's why the halacha is that we're pater in many of the mitzvahs, specifically because it's almost impossible to concentrate when a Levaya of a loved one is looming. At the Levaya itself, there's a very unique kind of anguish. And the anguish is due to the fact that very often the guf, the body of the nifter, is right there, right present, right in the room, and it's hard to know how to deal with that. And we're so used to being able to approach somebody and touch them, and that creates their reality, the fact that I can see them and I can touch them and they're right there. And here the body's right there, and yet the neshama is gone. It's a surreal experience, and I was part of Chevra Kadisha, and yet when it happened to me, it was a completely different experience. It actually, I think, changed the way that I deal with people who are in Avelus, because I went through that experience myself, and I understood firsthand the grief that is involved in the ptira. I'll tell you one particular point that was extremely painful. My brother was buried in Yerushalayim, and he had been living in South Africa at the time. So they took the body and they had brought it in a metal container, and it was in that metal container until right before they put the guf into the ground. And when they were ready to take the body out of the metal container, and for just one split moment, it was taken out of the container, then it was wrapped in a talus and put in the ground. So there would be one moment that the body, the face would be exposed. And the Chevra Kadisha told everyone who was there at the Beis HaKvaros to please turn around. So they shouldn't look at the face, they shouldn't look at the nifter, they shouldn't gawk. That's not the Yiddish way. We don't look for no reason, just for curiosity, at the face of the nifter. And they said turn around, and the truth is I hadn't seen my brother in weeks. I was living in New Jersey, he was living in South Africa, and I don't think there was anything I wanted to do more in my life than not turn around. I wanted to look, I wanted to say goodbye, I wanted to see his face, I wanted one last memory. And till this day, I did turn around, it was the right thing to do, but it made me much more sympathetic when I deal with people who are not from, and they want a showing, and they want the body dressed up, and it's against halacha, we don't do that. But instead of just being very strong about it, I understand, and I understood at that point why it's so compelling to have that one last look, that one last memory. At that point, they buried my brother on Har Tamir, which is right next to Har Menuchas, and we we sat Shiva in Harnof, and during the Shiva, people came, and I was able to see those who came and they gave a real nechama. And many very big people came. The Klausberger Rebbe came, and Moshe Sternbach, and some great people. And they came and they took their time. And the Klausberger Rebbe drove in from Kiryat Sanz. And again, there was a lesson there, a lesson that people who are in Avelis appreciate those who extend themselves to pay their respects, to be Menachem Avel. And until this day, this is already a number of years have gone by, and I remember that the Klausberger Rebbe took his time, and I remember those who lingered and those who offered us food and drink and were there for us. And I learned a tremendous amount about how to be Menachem Avel. I'm going to share with you an amazing story. During the end of Shiva, the Shiva is like a cocoon, and that's how we look at Shiva. It protects you, it takes care of you, it's there to watch over you. That's why we don't do anything. We're not distracted with shaving, we're not distracted with going to work, we're not distracted at all. We're focusing on the life of the Nifter. I never understood how in sports, for example, you could have a person who loses a mother or a father, and 2 days later the coach expects them to be on the team and play in the big game. Besides that, it's not a covered for the person who passed away. I mean, this was a life. But how does a person focus? And when is a person going to revisit the life of the Nifter? So the wisdom of Chazal is, they say, don't do anything but focus on that life. There's a very famous poem called The Dash. It's a very well-known poem, and the concept of the poem is a beautiful concept. The poem has somebody looking at a tombstone, at a matzeva, and they see the name of the person, and then they see the date of birth, and then the date of death, and then they see a dash in between the date of birth and the day of death. And the poet is looking at the dash, and they said, that dash is not just a line. It's not just a separator. That dash represents the person's entire life. The dash is your life. So what is your dash? And during the Shiva, we focus on the dash. We focus on what that person, what Kedusha that person brought to the world, what spirit, what light that person brought to those who were around them, what contribution their life represented, and what needs now filling due to the absence of this person. And it's a very, very critical time, that Shiva. And those who don't take Shiva seriously, there are some who, not within Torah Judaism, who the entire Avelus is just, you come back from the Levaya, there's food and there's cake, and then they say, we don't want to have a Shiva. And it could be they don't want to be matrich other people, they don't want to disturb other people, they want to inconvenience others, but I don't think they understand that absent that time to focus on the dash, that person is going to revisit it perhaps for many years to come. And those are a very, very critical time. So during the 7 days of mourning, people came and they told us stories, and we wrote down the stories, and letters were produced that my brother had written, and it was very powerful and it was very cathartic. Near the end of the Shiva, I'm going to tell you a small story that was very powerful. It teaches us how to give nechama. The halacha is at the end of the Shiva, the last day, many people don't mourn the entire last day. There's halacha Mitzvahs hayom kukulo. So we daven, we had breakfast, and then there's a minhag to walk around the block to signify the end of Shiva. And I was actually warned that walk around the block is a very powerful walk, and it's very traumatic. And I want to explain to you what that's about and why it was so powerful to me. We had finished eating breakfast, and my father said, okay, it's time to walk around the block. And I got up, myself, my brothers, and we walked outside. We were mourning in Harnof. Harnof is a very It was a very sunny day, very hot. It's about 10:30 in the morning, and the streets were deserted. Kids were in school, parents were at work, they were in koil. The streets were empty, and we go outside, and the sun is beating down, and we begin our walk. And during that walk, you don't speak. You don't speak. It's a silent walk to signify the exit of the cocoon of Shiva. And often the community walks with you, but not next to you. They'll walk behind you 10, 15 feet, sort of like to protect you, but not to infringe on your space. So we walked, and some people in the community were about 15 feet behind us, and myself, my brothers, my father were walking, and we're walking in silence. And during that walk, you have the time to think about how now life has to go on without the nifter. And I remember it was a very painful experience, because life going on means flying back to America and continuing my job and continuing as if things are normal, but they're not normal. Life is forever changed for me, and life is forever changed for our family. And this is what Avelus feels like. It's not a one-time occurrence. It's a paradigm shift in one's life. And I'm turning to my father. My father's an ER doctor, and I'm thinking, okay, he'll know how to handle this. He'll be the strength of the family. And I look at him, and he's bawling. One can't be strong. One can't be blamed for not being strong in certain circumstances. My mother used to say that during the first year, after my brother was nifter, she would wake up in the middle of the night, and my father would be sitting at the edge of his bed with his face in his hands crying. Just middle of the night, wakes up crying. And I learned a very important lesson, which is one never recovers from the death of a child. One is forever changed in discernible ways, right? And that's something we have to appreciate. Chas v'shalom, when somebody loses a child, it's different. Things we have to be sensitive to that. So I look at him, and he's bawling. And as I'm walking along this very long, silent block, I could hear my footsteps on the pavement, and I'm thinking, I can't do this. Now I'm going to walk back in the house, and life is going to go on, and I'll hop aboard a plane and continue. I was supposed to get old with my brother. We were supposed to share simchas together. We were supposed to be at chasanas together, marry off our children together, and now all that is gone? The best way to describe it is, I felt like I was walking down the steps to a very dark place. It's very dark. And by the time I finished that walk around the block, it felt like I was back at the Levaya again. It was really as devastating as the Levaya, like that realization that the cocoon of Shiva is over. And to make matters more difficult, my mother and the Almana were just leaving the house to begin their walk. They were going to walk with us, near us, but my mother was so frail that they needed people in the community to stand next to her to make sure she wouldn't collapse. And I'm looking at the face of the Almana. She's 26 years old. She has to raise 4 little kinderlach who are never going to know their father. How's she going to do this? How's she going to get remarried? And the whole thing was so tragic. I walk back in the house, and I'm thinking to myself, I hope no one says anything to me. Don't say it'll be okay. Don't say time heals all wounds. Don't give me cliches. Don't say anything. That's why the Gemara says, Agr de be'avlish tikusa. The reward for a beis avel is to keep quiet. Sometimes silence is golden. And I was thinking, don't say anything. I can't hear anything right now. I walk into the living room, and there is a young man, and he's sitting on a stool. And as we walk in, he just begins to sing. He doesn't say a word to us. He's a very good-looking fellow who's wearing this beautiful long jacket. And he looks at us as we walk in the room, and he begins to sing. I want you to feel the moment. He's saying, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elokeichem, which means be comforted, my nation, so says Hashem. And we're listening to this young man just sing to us. And we knew what to do. Myself, my brothers, we took chairs, we sat down next to him, and we went arm in arm linked, and we began to sing together. Dabru alei Yerushalayim V'kiru eileha. Speak to the heart of Yerushalayim. Call out to her. She is mourning. You are mourning. She is in pain. You're in pain. Give each other comfort, and together you're going to find Nechama. We sit and we sing with this young man for about 15 minutes, and when we finish singing, I jump up and I give this young man a hug, and I said, "Who are you? And how did you know to give Nechama?" Anyone else, anything else they would have said would have been wrong, could have even been hurtful. But you just gave our family Nechama. How did you know? How did you know? So he said, "My name is Sheftel, and I was one of your brother's best friends. I loved him like my own brother. He was just I was so close to him." He said, about a year ago, I got engaged to the most beautiful girl that you could ever dream of. You know, you wait all your life to find your bashert, and you don't know, maybe you'll have to compromise, maybe you'll have to settle. I didn't settle. I found the perfect girl for me. I was deliriously happy. My engagement, my vard, preparation for the wedding, and finally we got married in the most beautiful holy chasana in the courtyard of the great synagogue under the Jerusalem stars. I was the happiest man on planet Earth. A month after we got married, I came home to find my wife sprawled out on the kitchen floor. I called up the Magen David Adom. They took my wife away. She was unconscious. They took her away, and she never woke up. And I was devastated. You wait all your life to find your bashert, and then after 30 days, that's it, she's gone. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And, you know, the levaya, so much pain. I can't describe it to you. And the Shiva, I was like numb. People are trying to give me Nechama, and I couldn't even accept. I didn't know what to do with it. And then finally, the Shiva was over, and it was time to walk around the block. And I remember my walk. I remember how painful it was. I remember hearing my footsteps on the pavement and that silent, lonely walk, knowing I have to approach life now without my bashert. I got 30 days, and that was all I got with her, and I was in so much pain. And by the time I finished my walk, I was at the lowest place in my life. And I walk in the house as depressed and as low as one can imagine. And there, sitting, singing this song for me, was your brother Gavriel. He was singing Nachamu, Nachamu. I learned from him how to give Nechama. And just like you, I sat down next to him and we began to sing. And we sang Nachamu, Nachamu, and we linked arm in arm, and we cried together. And at the end, he jumps up and he gives me a hug, and he says, "My dear Sheftel, my dearest brother, what happened to you, such a tragedy, no one can give you proper Nechama. You were zoichet to have this wonderful woman that you were able to call your wife, even for 30 days. It was a zchus, it was a privilege, it was a gift, it was a matana from Hashem. You'll never forget those days that you had to spend with her, but life will go on, and I will be there with you every step of the journey. And you will one day get remarried, and you will have a family, and I will hold your hand through it, and I will be at your chasana, and I even know what I'm going to buy you for your wedding present. I'm going to buy you a tishbekasha for you to wear on Friday night while you sit around with your whole family." He gave me such nechama. He's the one who taught it to me. And here I am, a year later, sitting and singing Nachamu, Nachamu for Rav Gav himself, for Gavriel, together with his family, wearing the tishbekasha that he bought me a week ago as I got married to my beautiful new kala under the Yerushalayim stars. It needs great sensitivity to give nechama. It needs to understand what the person is going through, and to understand that you don't understand, and to understand that there are times when silence is golden and a hug is critical, and looking into the person's eyes and crying with them, that's the greatest nechama of all. Sincerity, just saying, "I will be there for you. You can rely on me." That's nechama. That's nechama. So, if you go into a shiva and you feel like, okay, I have a chiyuv, got to pay a shiva call, as if that's your social obligation, I would tell you, take 2 minutes before you walk in. Think about what it's like. Did you ever lose somebody close to you? Right? You wouldn't want someone just to pay a Shiva call, to pay their respects. But somebody who will take a moment to appreciate your pain. Your pain is my pain. Your suffering is my suffering, and your comfort is going to be my comfort as well. If you could convey that message, that's the greatest Nichum of all. We all have that ability. That is Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit is all about empathy. Empathy is the catalyst of all of Judaism. Love the person like you love yourself. What is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. Empathy, empathy, empathy. Yiddishkeit is all about saying, not you have pain and I understand that you have pain. Empathy is saying, I'm not gonna be the teacher, I'll be the student. I will be the listener, you be the teacher. You tell me your pain. Teach me what you're going through. That's Nichum Avelim. It's making the person sitting there close to the ground, without shoes, who is forlorn, who has a jacket and a shirt ripped. Make them your teacher. Sit at their feet. Let them teach you about the nifter. Let them teach you about pain. It's better to learn about life being in the Beis Avel. There's a mindset. One can gain a tremendous amount. But if it's just to patter it up, yes, you punched the clock. Yeah, you said the pasuk. You said the pasuk. So then what? Then what? Did you add anything? You have to add something. I'm on Hidabrut radio, and people call in and they ask different questions about how to deal with tsar and how to deal with the challenges in life. And just this morning, a lady asked the following question. She says, "I love Hashem, and I have such hakaras hatov to Hashem for everything that Hashem does for me, but I just recently lost 2 people who were very dear to me, and I feel down. What do I do? What do I do? I want to love Hashem, and I want to get back up. But what do I do?" So I answered this to the lady. I explained to her that one of the things that happens to people who experience death is they fall into some sort of a depression. They fall into a funk. They don't know how to deal. And one of the ways that we deal is through the Shiva, and we speak about the nifter. But there's something else, which is that everyone is nifter. We're all taking steps towards the edge of the cliff. So I quote Rabbi Einstetter. He says, we're all taking steps, and some of us have miles to go, and some of us don't realize, but we're one step away because we're all blindfolded. We don't know. We're all nifter. But when we think about the person who is nifter, and we celebrate their life, we say, what did they do with their life? Whose life did they enhance? What chesed did they do? What did they represent? What do they stand for? What deeds will live on? Did they make a shidduch? Did they help the poor? Did they raise a loving family? Were they involved in their shul, in their minyan, in their kollel? Were they involved with the klal? And when we look at the person who's nifter and we celebrate their life, it has to be a motivation for us to get up and not dwell on the nifter. A person who is alive and they understand that death is part of life, they have to pull themselves up and say, just like the nifter, we're celebrating what they've done, so too we have to roll up our sleeves and do. So the great nechama, the great way of being consoled is by doing. Doing is cathartic. Doing is the healer. Just to simply dwell, that's not what the nifter wants. That's one of the reasons that when Chazal gave us the halachas of Avelis, they slowly weaned us away from the nifter and the Avelis. There's a week, and then there's 30 days, and then there's Toich Shana. And slowly but surely, the message is, we get up and we do. A great person once said that we're all writing a book. Actually, this was Rebbe. Rebbe says, we're all writing a book. And just like we read Ela told us Noach, and just like we read Chaya Sarah, and we read the story of Yisro, when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a book about each and every one of us. It's going to be Torah Selikim Chaim. Each one of us has our own book. And the question is not how long the book is or how many pages that novel has. Yes, some of the books can be very long, 100 years long, 105 years. Some are 65 years long. Some are much shorter than that. The question is not how thick the book is. The question is, does it have a satisfying conclusion? When you close that book, do you say, wow, what an amazing read, what a story, how inspirational, how motivational, how spiritual. So when we look at a person who is nifter and we want to give them nechama, the best thing that we could do is to find something that they can do that will give them inspiration, will give them meaning for living, reason for continuing on. Just yesterday, I was Menachem Avel, somebody who lost their mother. And this person also had a daughter, and the daughter said, I'm worried. My mother had been spending all this time with her mother, taking care of her, and now she won't have anything to do. She herself is getting older. What can she do? She's just going to get depressed that she lost her mother. So I went in and I spoke with her and I said, look, I hear that you have a chush, you have a talent in going to hospitals and helping out with the administration and helping people get the attention that they need. And sometimes a person who's ill, they come to the hospital and they're not receiving proper attention and no one's coming to visit them. And sometimes it's difficult. So maybe you can go and make that your calling. Go to hospitals, see who needs the care, see who is not getting the care that they need from the hospital, and be an advocate for them. That's and she was very happy. She was happy to know that there's something she could do. And that's a great motivation for a person who is in mourning, to be able to get up at a certain point and to do. Doing is what gives us reason for living. When being Menachem Avel, somebody who is not Torah observant, one has to be very sensitive. Death creates questions. Questions of, are we doing it right? What's the purpose of life? Is there a life after life? Do we believe in a Gan Eden and a Gehenna? And for those who grew up not religious, all of a sudden these questions can plague them. And we have to be ultra sensitive, certainly not to condemn, certainly not to give musar. This is a golden opportunity to give chizuk and to say, look, everything that you are is b'zchus your parents or the person who was nifter. All of the goodness that makes you a person of fine character, makes you a person who's kind and compassionate. And you can focus on that. And if they ask questions, well, my parents weren't observant, you could say, look, the Torah is the Torah is divided into two parts. Ben Adam la'makam and Ben Adam la'chaver. Between us and Hashem, it could be they didn't learn, they didn't know. But let's focus on what they contributed. And what they contributed was certainly magnificent. And certainly we have to learn from them. They have to become our teacher. And if we can explain that to the people who are nifter, to the family of the people who are nifter, we can give them tremendous chizuk. In addition, we have the opportunity to encourage them to perhaps come and say Kaddish. It's not such a toiva necessarily to offer to say Kaddish for them. It's better to say, look, I'll come with you to shul. I'll teach you how to say the Kaddish. There was a person who was nifter, and he had a son, a young son, before bar mitzvah. So I made a tape of Kaddish, repeating it again and again and again. and their young son learned how to say Kaddish and went and said Kaddish for his father all year. It was till this day they thank me for that. And one can encourage them to do something bizchus the nifter, whether it's lighting Shabbos candles, putting on tefillin. I have a website, Shabbat.com, and a person on the website wrote in their profile, my father passed away, so this year I decided I'm going to put on tefillin and go to shul. But they also signed up for Shabbat.com, which is a way to invite someone for Shabbos. Why? Because apparently their father, being nifter, told them that they should say Kaddish. Someone at that point mentioned to them, if you're in shul, you should put on tefillin. Tefillin got them interested in Shabbos, so they signed up with the site. And one mitzvah leads to the next, So it's a golden opportunity to encourage that person to be in touch with their roots. So that's a very valuable lesson. I think the last thing I want to convey to you is that when we're going to be Menachem Avel, no matter who it is, we have to stop a moment and become sincere. And we're all sincere to a degree, but we also have our chiyuvim and we have our day-to-day things that we're busy with. And if we're not sincere, it comes off. It shows. When I was a rabbi in New Jersey, so I used to perform funerals, and the funeral home would call me up and they would say, Rabbi, someone passed away, will you do the funeral? And usually they were part of my shul, even if I hadn't met them, even if they had moved to Miami or so, but their plot was still in my shul, so I performed the funeral. And when the chapel would call me up, I would then take the name and the information of the nifter, and then I would use that for my hesped. So it happened once that a lady passed away, and I called up the sister and I asked for information about the nifter so I can perform the levaya. And the next day I came, and there were hundreds of people there. And I said, who else is delivering a eulogy? Who else is giving a hesped? They said, Rabbi, it's all you. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I'm a professional. And I got up there, and everyone is silent, and I take out my notes to deliver the hesped, and I notice I have all the information necessary except for one very critical piece of information I forgot to ask. You guessed it. I forgot to ask the name of the nifteris. And there was no way that I was able to walk back down and ask her name. That would have been terrible. So I proceeded to deliver a hesped for 20 minutes without ever mentioning the name of the nifteris, which is trickier than it sounds. Imagine starting a hesped. We are here to pay our respects to an amazing woman. She inspired us to grow, and she did great things in her life, and never mentioning her name. And it was embarrassing. If I had had a shovel, I would have dug a hole there right for myself and jumped in. So when it was finished, it was mamish bushes, like the whole place buzzing. Hey, why won't the rabbi mention her name? The whole place, they weren't religious, and here I was not mentioning her name. And finally we finished. Okay, what could I do? It was now time for me to call up people to do to Ter Kriya. So I announced, okay, Sophie, please come up to Ter Kriya, and then the whole place erupts. And I don't know what's the matter. Finally, the sister comes over to me, and she says, Rabbi, how is Sophie going to Ter Kriya? She's in the box. And I tried to say, no, Ter Kriya for Sophie. Nobody believed me. So it was a great lesson. You can't do a perfunctory funeral. You can't just punch the clock. You got to care, and it's got to mean enough. And if it would have meant enough to me, I would have made sure I knew her name. So from then on, I took it to heart, and this is a great lesson. Of course, I was very nice to the family afterwards, and I apologized, and it was okay. But it's a lesson, this is a mitzvah, levayas hamei. It's a great mitzvah that we could do, and we should give it our all and feel empathy for those who are in pain, and Hashem will make sure midah keneged midah, that we ourselves won't feel pain.